Welcome back, Code Buddies, and welcome to another interesting episode with Miss Princess. Today we are going to learn how to create a space shooter game where we have a rocket ship shooting at a ladybug. If that's something you're interested in, please stick around to the end of the video so that you can see how we made that possible. The first thing we're going to do is to select a backdrop, and I'm going to choose the space backdrop. The next thing I'm going to do is to select the rocket ship sprite. I'm going to go ahead to reduce the size of the rocket ship. After that, I'm going to add code blocks that would make the rocket ship move to the left and to the right. Moving on, we're going to add a sprite that would serve as the shooter. Because we don't typically have something like that in Scratch, we are going to paint ours. So I'm going to click on the paint icon. I'm going to go to costumes. Using the circle tool, I'm just going to draw some little red circles, about 4 of them. Then I'm going to go ahead to reduce the size and also rename it. So I'm going to be renaming it to laser. This sprite now is going to serve as the shooter or the bullets. Next up, we are going to create a clone of this sprite. If you're not familiar with how to create a clone, please check out my previous videos. So for every time we click on the space key, it is going to create a clone. Every time the laser starts as a clone, it goes to the rocket ship, and also every time it gets to the edge of the screen, which is the top at this point, it deletes that particular clone. So right here, I was just trying to make a few adjustments just to make sure that the rocket ship and the laser align properly together so that it looks exactly like the laser is, or the rocket ship rather, is shooting the laser. That was what I was trying to do there. I'm now going to get the enemy sprites. I decided to use a ladybug for the enemy. Right now, we're also going to create a clone of the ladybug so that it has a lot of it appearing on the screen while the rocket ship is trying to shoot them. The ladybug is going to stay at the top of the screen. All the clones that are appearing are going to be at the top of the screen. So they will start coming from the top of the screen and then come down. So we had to set X to pick a random position from where it's going to appear at the top of your screen. Because it's going to be coming down, we have to use the code block that says change Y by, and then I want it to come down with at different speed intervals, right? So I had to use a pick random code block, and I set it to -2 to -5. So that means that at some point it will come down with a speed of -2, and at another point it will come back with a speed of -3, -4, or -5. So it's just going to pick random speeds to come down by. So sometimes it might be fast, sometimes it might be slow. Now we want it to be able to delete its clone whenever it's touching the rocket ship, it's touching the edge of the screen, or it's touching the laser. So if the ladybug comes in contact with the rocket ship, the laser, or the edge of the screen, it deletes this clone. The edge of the screen now in this case is if it finally gets down to the bottom of the screen without coming in contact with the rocket ship. All right, so I just had to put all of them inside one code block. Let's test it out now. You're going to notice three things. If the ladybug gets to the bottom of the screen, it disappears. If the ladybug comes in contact with the laser sprite, it disappears. And also, if the ladybug comes in contact with the rocket ship, it also disappears. The next thing we are going to do now is to add a score so that each time the laser comes in contact with the ladybug, the user or the player gets a score for that. So that means you've successfully shot or killed the ladybug. I'm going to add that code block in the laser sprite. The next thing we are going to do is to create a variable for lives. For every time the ladybug comes in contact with the rocket ship, the user or the player is going to lose a life. Adding that code block, I'm going to go to the backdrop so that I can set the lives to 3 and also the score to 0 whenever it starts. By the time we test it out, you're going to see that every time the laser shoots the ladybug, the user gets a score, and also every time the ladybug comes in contact with the rocket ship, the user or the player loses a life. At this point now, I'm going to add a code block that would end the game every time the score gets to 0. So I'm going to say if lives equals 0, stop all. All of that inside the forever code block, of course. By the time we test it out, you're going to see that when the lives get to 0, the game would stop on its own. After that, I'm going to add a code block in the rocket ship sprite so that the rockets can have a little effect for every time the ladybug comes in contact with it. So it's going to look like it goes away for a few seconds and then comes back. So I'm going to add the code block hide show wait 0.3 seconds. By the time you test it out, you're going to notice that each time the rocket ship comes in contact with the ladybug or the ladybug comes in contact with the rocket ship, it disappears for a few seconds and then comes back. The next thing I'm going to do is to add a timer. If you're also not familiar with how to do that, I have made a video about that as well in one of my previous videos. I'm going to add a timer and I will set it to 10 seconds. So the game is going to last for 10 seconds. Of course, you can increase it or reduce it depending on what you decide to work with. By the time we test it out, you're going to see that everything is working. The timer is counting down, the score is increasing, and the life is also reducing. The last thing I'm going to be adding to this project are sounds. So for the rocket ship sprite, I'm going to add the high whoosh sound so that every time it comes in contact with the ladybug, it makes that sound. So I'm just going to put in the code blocks start sound, high whoosh. And then in the laser sprite, I'm going to add the pew sound, P-E-W, so that every time the laser comes in contact with the ladybug, it also makes a sound. Searching for the pew sound. Searching. So by the time we test all of this out, you're going to see that the rocket ship shoots the laser, the ladybug comes down as a clone, the sounds make their sound, and the lives, the score, and the timer also works. Thank you so much for watching, Code Buddies. Please make sure you subscribe to this channel, like the video, leave a comment, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye, Code Buddies!